You know what I've been noticing lately in my own walk and in the lives of so many people I've had the privilege to pray with and counsel? There's this quiet stirring happening right now in the hearts of those who've been waiting for something real, something lasting, something that actually reflects the love they've been preparing themselves to give. And I don't say that lightly, because I know waiting isn't passive. Waiting is one of the hardest, most faith-demanding seasons a person can walk through, especially when it comes to matters of the heart. But here's what I want you to hear today, not as some cosmic declaration or mystical prophecy, but as someone who has watched God work in the most unexpected ways, in the most unexpected timing. There is a shift taking place in the spiritual atmosphere around your connection with this person. And it's not the kind of shift that announces itself with fireworks or sudden clarity. It's the kind that begins in the unseen places first, in their heart, in their thoughts, in the way they're starting to process what they walked away from or what they've been too afraid to fully step into. You see, sometimes the universe, or God if that's the language that resonates with you, doesn't shout. He whispers. And right now, that whisper is working on their heart in ways you can't see yet, but that doesn't make it any less real. I want to take you to something the Apostle Paul said in Ephesians, and I'm paraphrasing here, but he talks about how we don't wrestle against flesh and blood. We wrestle against things we can't see, spiritual forces, internal battles, fears that have roots deeper than we realize. And when I think about your person, the one you've been praying for, hoping for, maybe even crying over in those quiet moments when no one else is watching, I believe there's a wrestling happening inside of them right now. Not a wrestling against you, but a wrestling with themselves, with old wounds, with past failures, with the fear that they're not enough or that they'll mess this up like they've messed other things up. But here's what I need you to understand, and I mean really let this settle into your spirit. That wrestling is not a sign that they don't care. It's often a sign that they care so much that they're terrified. Because when you've been hurt before, when you've seen love fall apart, or when you've carried shame about who you used to be, stepping into something real, something sacred, requires a level of courage that most people don't talk about. And sometimes the people we love the most are the ones who need the most time to build that courage. I think about the story of Jacob in Genesis, wrestling with God all night long, refusing to let go until he received a blessing. And God didn't condemn him for the struggle. He blessed him because of his persistence, because Jacob was willing to stay in the fight even when it hurt, even when it stretched him, even when he walked away limping. Your person is in their own kind of wrestling match right now, and you can't fight it for them. But what you can do is trust that the same God who met Jacob in that struggle is meeting them in theirs. You don't have to force it. You don't have to chase it. You don't have to prove your worth over and over again, hoping they'll finally see it. Your job is to stand firm in who you are, to protect your peace, and to believe that what's meant for you will not require you to shrink yourself to receive it. I've seen too many beautiful souls dim their light trying to make someone else comfortable, trying to be less so that someone else could feel like more. And that's not what God calls us to. In fact, when I read the Psalms, especially Psalm 139, I'm reminded that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that every part of us was knit together with intention, with purpose, with a design that reflects the image of our Creator. And if this person is truly meant to walk alongside you, they will come to recognize that. Not because you convince them, but because the truth of who you are will become undeniable to them. There's something shifting in the way they see you now, and it's subtle, but it's significant. Maybe they're starting to notice the peace you carry, the way you've chosen to grow instead of grow bitter, the way you've refused to let this season of waiting turn you into someone you're not. Maybe they're realizing, slowly, painfully, beautifully, that they let go of something they weren't supposed to let go of. Or maybe they're finally reaching a place where they can handle what you've been ready to offer all along. Because here's the truth, and it's one I've had to learn myself through my own seasons of waiting and wondering. Sometimes it's not that the love isn't there, it's that the person isn't ready to steward it yet. And there's a difference between someone who doesn't want you and someone who wants you but is still healing, still learning, still becoming the person who can actually show up the way you deserve. God's timing is not always our timing. And I know that's one of those phrases that can feel overused or even frustrating when you're in the thick of waiting. But when I look back on my own life, on the moments when I thought I knew better than God about when something should happen, I can see now with such clarity that His delays were actually His protection. There were versions of me that weren't ready for certain blessings. There were versions of the people I loved who weren't ready either. And if we had collided in those unhealed, unfinished states, we would have damaged something that was meant to be sacred. So when I tell you that there's a shift happening, I'm not saying it's happening on your timeline. I'm saying it's happening on the timeline that will actually produce something lasting. Something that doesn't just feel good for a moment, but endures through seasons, through challenges, through the kind of life that requires two people who are spiritually and emotionally grounded. Right now, I believe your person is going through a recalibration. They're being shown things about themselves, about their patterns, about what they've been running from or hiding behind. And that process isn't comfortable. Growth never is. But discomfort is often the doorway to transformation, and I truly believe they're in the middle of that doorway right now. You've probably felt it, haven't you? That sense that something is different, even if you can't point to any concrete evidence. Maybe it's in the way they've crossed your mind more often lately, or in the dreams you've had, or in the sudden memories that surface for no apparent reason. I don't believe those are coincidences. I believe those are indicators that your spirits are still connected, that there's still a thread between you that hasn't been severed, even if the physical distance or the silence has tried to convince you otherwise. In the book of Ecclesiastes, we're reminded that there's a time for everything, a season for every activity under the heavens, a time to tear down and a time to build, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather them. And I think sometimes we're so focused on the gathering, on the building, on the reunion, that we forget the tearing down and the scattering are also part of the process. Sometimes things have to fall apart so they can be rebuilt correctly. Sometimes people have to walk away so they can come back whole. And if that's what's happening here, then every day of this waiting is not wasted. It's preparation. It's foundation laying. It's the kind of deep work that can't be rushed if you want it to hold weight. Now, I want to talk to you about something that I think is really important, and it's about the energy you're carrying during this time. Because here's what I've noticed, both in my own life and in the lives of people I've walked alongside. The energy we hold, the frequency we operate on, it sends out a signal. It's like a broadcast that the universe, that God, that the spiritual realm picks up on. And when you're operating from a place of desperation, of lack, of fear that you're going to lose this person or that you're not enough, that signal is shaky, it's inconsistent, it doesn't reflect the truth of who you are. But when you shift into a place of peace, of trust, of knowing that what's yours will find you and what's not yours was never meant to stay, that signal becomes clear. It becomes magnetic. And I don't mean that in some manipulative, if you just vibe high enough, they'll come back kind of way. I mean that in the most spiritually grounded sense. When you are at peace, when you are whole within yourself, when you are rooted in the knowledge that you are loved by God regardless of whether this person sees your value, you become the fullest expression of who you were created to be. And that version of you is impossible to ignore. That version of you reflects light in a way that draws in the right people and repels the wrong ones. So if you've been struggling with anxiety, with the need to control the outcome, with checking their social media or replaying old conversations trying to figure out what went wrong, I want to gently invite you to release that. Not because it's wrong to care, but because that kind of energy keeps you stuck in the past or in a future you can't control, and it robs you of the present moment where your actual power lives. Jesus said in Matthew, and I'm paraphrasing again, "Don't worry about tomorrow because tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble of its own." And I think what he was really saying is that our job is to be present, to be faithful in the now, to trust that the God who sees the end from the beginning is handling what we can't see. Your person is on their own journey right now, and part of loving them well is giving them the space to walk it without your interference, without your attempts to speed it up or redirect it. That doesn't mean you sit around passively waiting for them to decide you're worth it. It means you live your life fully, you pursue your own healing, you invest in your own growth, and you trust that what's meant for you will not require you to shrink yourself to receive it. I've seen too many beautiful souls dim their light trying to make someone else comfortable, trying to be less so that someone else could feel like more. And that's not what God calls us to. In fact, when I read the Psalms, especially Psalm 139, I'm reminded that we are fearfully and wonderfully made, that every part of us was knit together with intention, with purpose, with a design that reflects the image of our Creator. And if this person is truly meant to walk alongside you, they will come to recognize that. Not because you convinced them, but because the truth of who you are will become undeniable to them. There's something shifting in the way they see you now, and it's subtle, but it's significant. Maybe they're starting to notice the peace you carry, the way you've chosen to grow instead of grow bitter, the way you've refused to let this season of waiting turn you into someone you're not. Maybe they're realizing, slowly, painfully, beautifully, that they let go of something they weren't supposed to let go of. Or maybe they're finally reaching a place where they can handle what you've been ready to offer all along. Because here's the truth, and it's one I've had to learn myself through my own seasons of waiting.